All right, welcome back. It's 7:27. Starting the topic today, slightly a bit late because of technical issues, but nevertheless we are here. Welcome to the program. My name is Victor Olo. Being a breakfast show, we do it the best way we know how. All right? Tutakuwa na mazungumzo tukinywa chai ama tukikunywa chai. Which is which? Wakili, tukinywa chai ama tukikunywa chai?
Mimi najua tukikunywa chai.
Tukikunywa chai.
Yes.
Tunapiga gumzo tukikunywa chai. Tukinywa
chai pengine tukiwa pwani,
yes.
Lakini tukiwa hapa tunakunywa.
Tukinywa chai. That's interesting. Kiswahili department, please correct us if you are wrong. Kiswahili Kinakamche, please talk to us. What's the best way to go about it? Okay. Good morning. Wairimu Gatacha is an advocate of the High Court. We want to talk about the issue to do with NG-CDF. There is that public participation happening across the country, across all the 290 constituencies across the country. The debate about to entrench the NG-CDF in the constitution has been a hot potato, depending on how you want it. And now members of parliament are engaging constituents across the country to get their views in as far as this is concerned. So let's talk about this. NG-CDF, to be or not to be? That is the big question that I want us to talk about. And if you are watching, please just talk to us. Send us a message. What do you think about the NG-CDF? Many have said that it's quite beneficial to them because they've seen the transformation and the kind of support they have received because of that fund. And right now, I want us to talk about it right now. NG-CDF, to be or not to be? Talk to us. Our numbers will be on shortly. So, Wairimu, once again, good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much.
So, you and I probably might not be direct beneficiaries of the NG-CDF.
Yes.
But what is your take on it?
Thank you for having me, Olo. I think the spirit within which the fund was created was to make sure that developments and some of these services get to the people.
Yes.
And there is nothing wrong with having such a fund in place. Every other time, the problem is how it is implemented, how the whole plan is implemented. You find like there are people who in between the process would want to dilute the purpose and the reason why that fund was initially created. So I am in full support of the fund. However, there are some loopholes that ought to be sealed throughout the process. They need to be looked into, they need to be sealed.
Yeah.
I was following up the process of the public participation throughout the constituencies, and it was overwhelmingly acceptable to the people because everyone who was weighing in on this topic said just how the fund has come down to help them. There are those that are talking about the education and the bursaries. There are those that are talking about roads, electrification and such kind of things. So we can see what the fund has done. Nonetheless, we must also understand the politics that are involved.
Yes. Because
the problem is, how can you be in legal terms we say the judge, the jury and the executioner.
Yeah.
You cannot be the one who is legislating and executing and implementing. There has to be checks and balances whenever it comes to any process that involves the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this case, you in legal terms, in relation to the act itself and the members of parliament, the fund itself, and the beneficiaries, how would you relate the three or the two? Because members of parliament are saying it has to be domiciled in their desk, all right, in their departments. But we are also seeing that push and pull from the governors and members of parliament. They also need some funds to the counties.
And also the senators.
And also the senators.
They are
and
talking
even some
about
MCS.
Yes, and they are talking about their role in oversight. You know, it's like in the most common terms that maybe Wanjiko and Mora will understand, there is what we call, like, maybe there is something that is there. in some few years we were told that kuna nyama iko kwa mdomo and all that. So there is something that is on the table and everyone wants to have a share of it. So you're trying to justify reasons why it should be allocated to you. So in my opinion, first of all, there was the court decided that it was an unconstitutional fund. However, what has it achieved? You see, so I think it is in the process of how it is implemented that needs to be checked. Because what will be done differently if the fund is taken to the governors? Have the governors fully actually made use of the funds that they collect from the county governments? Are we seeing, have they inspired enough faith that what they've been able to do, they can be entrusted with this other fund? That is one. For the senators, what oversight exactly are they going to be providing? The MCAs, I feel it's like every person, every stakeholder wanting to have a share of the share of the pie, which at the end of the day dilutes the entire reason why we have the fund in the first place. Because if it is working, then let us look at the loopholes and where the problems are, instead of us thinking that we should maybe divert the funds to different other offices to achieve the same purpose. Because is it going to save more money for the mwananchi? Is it going to use more money? Is it going to bring more developments to the mwananchi? What exactly are we looking at to achieve?
Because when you look at, when you have got different stakeholders, MCAs, senators, governors, and members of parliament are yearning for the same fund, that would result into duplication of roles.
Exactly.
So you look at, you are in area X or area Y. So how would, even if you wanted to bring some list, how would you segregate, or how would you bring all the regions together and say, because this region belongs to this, you're going to get bursary because of that, you're going... Is it not going to create a lot of confusion?
It will bring a lot of confusion, Vic. No doubt about it. Because we have been talking about duplication of roles within government for a very long time, and overlapping responsibilities and roles, which is a problem that needs to be cured, because that is also where we find the taxpayers' money also going. So in my opinion, I do not see why we should have these go to other offices, the governors, the MCAs, the senators. I'm not so sure even the implementation should be done by the MPs. So if we can go back to the drawing board, the other time we were on the show, there was a suggestion that that money should be consolidated and taken to the Ministry of Education, where now it will be able to disburse the amounts and all that. But how workable is it? It's a very serious conversation that should be ongoing, because there's also a lot of, we've also seen a lot of loss of funds and resources still in the implementation of this NG-CDF that's working. So it is not functional fully, because in as much as there is development and there are results that can be seen, there are still some gaps. Because sometimes you find, like, when I've seen instances when they are talking about when the bursary fund is being given, the preparation itself is more than what is being given. And sometimes when you look at that, you wonder, what are we really trying to achieve here? Because it's in the tent, it's in the seats, it's in the catering that gets to spend a lot more than what you're even taking to the people. So there is a lot that comes into play that needs to be checked on. And also when it comes to public participation, I'm happy to see that Kenyans are out there and giving their views. Also worthy to note is that there was heavy lobbying that was done by the parliamentarians, and it's because they want a good word and they want to retain the fund within their control. So it's important that we see public participation where Kenyans are aware and are willing and ready and brave enough to give their views exactly on how they view the things, so that they can criticize. I felt like it was overwhelmingly supported, and I wondered, was there not a single voice of dissent that would have said, we see ABCD happening with the fund, however, ABCD needs to be corrected. I feel like there is something that also needs to be communicated clearly.
Okay, so now what happens after the public participation? The members of parliament shall have received the report or the views from the Wananchi, and then now they'll come back to Nairobi, quote unquote. So now what happens thereafter? Does it have to go through a legislative process in parliament, or what will happen so that it can be entrenched in the constitution?
Essentially, what they're doing right now, they are collecting the views of the Kenyans, the views of the people. They're supposed to do an analysis of the input, and they're supposed to prepare a report that adequately gives a report of a reflection of what they collected on the ground. Before implementation, it should go back to the parliament, because that is the house that legislates. It should go back so that they can consider the views of the people, and it is after considering the views of the people that they will see where, if at all, to make amendments or deletions or additions. So thereafter, it has to be entrenched in the constitution. But then now, you put it in a very nice way. In legal terms, you are the accused person, you are the executioner. But then now, they're collecting the views from the Wananchi, then they're still going to legislate on the same report in parliament. That is exactly what I'm saying. That is exactly what I'm saying. We cannot have such a good intended fund, handled, managed, and done everything, but one particular arm of the government, that one does not augur right.
So now what should happen? Because they're the same MPs who are going to come up with the report to debate it.
Absolutely.
Definitely it's going to be biased, because they don't want that money to go off their hands. So what should happen? Should we have a legal interpretation or intervention on this?
It is very important for us to cure the entire process, and it can only be done legally through legal channels, because it is also a procedural process. We know that whenever we have these commissions and committees that are set up, there is always a point of control, and unfortunately they do not seem to weigh in or to put in what we expect of them. I am of the opinion that, my own personal opinion, which I will stand guided, but I'm of the opinion that we should legislate on this fund without wanting, unfortunately it's the parliamentarians who will do it, but we should have them legislating over it, but the implementation should be done differently. Because even the process right now, you've seen how much lobbying they have done for the public participation. A very high likelihood, which is not the truth, or might be the truth, is that what we have seen is probably the mouthpiece of these particular leaders. The people are saying what they are told to say, or what they are directed, you see. So I feel that we should go back to the drawing board and separate roles and responsibilities. Yes.
The controller budget has raised a number of questions in as far as the proper use of this fund is concerned. How do you control this? Because MPs will say that that money does not belong to them. There is a committee that when they want that money to go to them, there is a committee which sits in Nairobi. They come up with a budget, and that committee is the one that releases the money to the constituencies. But still the controller budget would say, hey, there's a lot of misappropriation of funds in this. So what should happen in this case?
Victor, that is a very difficult question to answer. And it's also not so hard to answer, because You know, if everyone did what they need to do and they do it right, we will not be having that kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if someone has to control, someone has to disburse, someone has to consume, someone has to use. But if we're responsible, we'll be able to do what needs to be done. Unfortunately, it is very unfortunate that the people that are allowed to apportion, disburse, and all that, they don't get to do what they ought to do. You find that there's a lot of pilferage and of funds and all, which beats the whole reason why this fund is actually being used the way it should be used. Yeah.
Does Mwananchi really understand the importance of having public participation fully?
I want to believe that it's a growing conversation, because initially there are some legislative acts of parliament that will be released for public participation in those sectors that are especially involved, like maybe in the ICT, in the energy, but you find that the stakeholders are not even aware there's such a bill that is out there for their participation and for their comments. But after the 2024-2025 finance bill, the Kenyans have started understanding the need for public participation. And it is important that we also understand how exactly do we weigh in our opinions, because it's for a process to work, there has to be some order and processes and procedures to be followed. I want to believe that Kenyans are slowly starting to understand and appreciate public participation and how much it weighs in the democracy growing of a country. So, yeah, I believe that they are somewhat starting to understand, although there is need for a lot of awareness to be created by the people that understand the processes. And I feel like we should also try to make sure that it's not just an illusion. It's not just a technical step that ought to be taken for the purposes of ticking it as having been done.
There is this case, or there's this term, somebody will say the whole process has been overtaken by events. Ever since we had this fund, it's been years now. But the court ruled and said, this is unconstitutional. So it takes precedence. It's been there for long, or it's unconstitutional.
That is the tussle that we have before us, because...
Yeah, because definitely we can see the product of having that fund.
Exactly.
Much as it's unconstitutional, yes, but we can see the results.
Yes. Yeah. So there are things that were done in retrospect before this ruling, before this judgment was issued. So you cannot take away the good and the positive that came out of this fund.
Was that the reason why the court was a bit careful in making that judgment, not to throw the baby with the bathwater completely, to abandon it, and gave Parliament some leeway? Can you go and have public participation, then come back?
Yes.
Yes, I see it's unconstitutional, but it's
there's
working.
Something good that's coming out of it. Yeah. Also, what we must also appreciate and accept is that our country is one politically driven country. How that petition even found itself in court could have been a very political process, because why do we want the Parliament alone to handle this fund, to do the implementation, to do the legislation, to do the oversight and everything? So for us to have this fund either disbanded or thought through, let's go to court, it's going to find it unconstitutional, it is going to be restructured, and it will be spread to different other stakeholders. So there is also a lot of siasa there, but I think after the public has collected its, after collection of the public views and weighing and analyzing the input of the public, we'll be able to see it's a good fund, but there's something that needs to be done.
There's something needs to be done.
Yeah.
the initial purpose of this was to have the socio-economic backbone of our country driven from the constituency level and all that. But to some extent, it's becoming political. When you want to see, governors are also angling for the same piece of pie. Senators, same piece of pie. MCAs also angling for the same. Then don't you think that Mwananchi is going to get confused? That even though all these levels of governance are looking for the same, are they also yearning for the same piece? There is one person who is at the center, Wanjiku, who is actually benefiting more from it. So the confusion would be, the governor has the funds, senator has the funds, members of parliament, MCA, etc., etc. Even women rep will say, wait a minute, you know, we are also elected members.
Yes.
So we need that fund. Don't you think it's going to beat the logic of having this fund in the first place?
Exactly. It is going to beat the purpose of having this fund, because when they look at it not as service delivery, as a tool to offer service and development to the people of Kenya, but they look at it from, what do I have to control? And in control, what will be my share? It goes back to this, Vic. We have an influx of politicians who are after their own self-interest, and we have very few leaders, because a leader will overlook their personal interest in an issue, and they will look at what serves the public and what brings development and services and justice to the people that are raising these taxes. So following this and looking at what do I have to control, where will I be able to control funds, you know, because right now, in as much as they said to be a very serious rift between especially the parliamentarians and the ground, what we saw yesterday was a completely different, what we've been seeing with the public participation is a completely different story, because the people on the ground are praising their parliamentarians for good usage of the fund, for bringing them development, for bringing them roads and electricity and bursary funds and building schools and all that. So I think we need to, it is important for us to collect as many views as we can. It's important for the report to be made public so that we can see. In every perfect process, there must be
some flaws to it.
Some flaws to it. So when it's too perfect, and yet there are reasons before the court that have caused it to be termed unconstitutional, we are not sure if the process is exactly as it should be. Yes. Okay.
And then, you know, it's not even a case of to be scrapped totally or not. It's a case of the constitutionality. Yes. Somebody would say, or as the court pronounced itself on the matter, go and conduct public participation, bring it back. So, was the court so lenient in making a decision?
It was. And you know, the court essentially tries to restore order.
Yes.
Alongside.
What do you think was running through the mind of the judge, you know, in writing that judgment and the ruling? What was running through the mind of the judge?
When it comes to processes and procedures of how a fund as such should be created and run, there are some options. There are options. There are some things that ought to be done and looked into. However, this fund that has not been properly framed and taken care of has also served very good things, very good purposes, very good, it has achieved very good things. So instead of scrapping it out, I will give you an opportunity to go back to the public who you say it has done something. Go find out what they have to say about it, the good and the bad, and then bring it back. Because it's not a fund that should not be there. It's about how it is being used, how it has been framed, how it has been, all those things, you know. So I think that it was a very sound judgment to not only to not scrap it out immediately, but to send them back to the people, so that we don't remove something that is entirely good. Because when we scrap out the NG-CDF, then what are we going to be doing?
Members of Parliament would say they're still going to go back to the normal way of doing things, the Harambes, where, you know, way back in the day, there would be Harambe somewhere to collect funds and take school street. But then the truth of the matter is, when people talk about NG-CDF, they only think about the bursary. But the truth of the matter is that money is being used for different projects across the constituencies. Either construction of classes, new classrooms, you know, buying of new stationary desks, talk about that, and even building of bridges in different areas of the constituencies across the country. You've put it correctly that yes, there's that good side, but the other side of it is the misappropriation of funds. With the Controller of Budget is also questioning that we need to seal the loopholes. What do you think should be done? Because if there is a committee which sits down and says, this financial year, we are going to give this particular amount. This is how you're going to spend it on Project X and Project Y. So how do you seal that loophole so that it's watertight, devoid of corruption and misappropriation of this fund?
I think in everything, we have professionals and experts that should be in this, that should be involved in these processes. There should those that should be advising on the legality. There should those that should be advising on the numbers. There should be those people that are advising on the how to manage the resources, which people to involve, which people not to involve. I think if we have, and the country is already having enough of this, if we have professional experts that are involved in the processes to make sure that this goes where it's supposed to go, and we have a regulation controlling this kind of situation, then I think we'll be able to see something different.
So what if it's handed over to the governors? Will we see some change?
I think we'll see a change, but not a very positive one, because let the governors...
A change is a change.
A change is a change, but not a very good one, because, for instance, let them first inspire confidence in how they're already running their affairs in the government, in their county governments. Then there could be a consideration if they are actually supposed to be handling this fund. In my opinion, I don't see it as a very good option for them to handle that fund. I think they already have enough roles and responsibilities, enough sources of collection of revenue, and I think that is something that should be separated from them. Yes.
There is something, but somebody says that Kenya parliamentarians should strictly stick to legislation, oversight and representation roles as enshrined in the Constitution. They have no business handling taxpayers' money save for their salaries, period.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. That that is also when we are talking about being the judge, the jury, the executioner and all that, we could not have them handle everything in this fund. So let them legislate and let the other relevant people and stakeholders do what they ought to do when it comes to managing the fund. If there is oversight, of course there is oversight, there is going to be someone who is going to do the oversight, and they will maybe be appointed or something I want to imagine now when we bring oversight, we have the Senate,
Yeah.
we have the MCAs, everyone wanting. It's not a very easy situation to give a direct answer. It's quite complex, but something will come through. Something will come up. We are happy. We'll be excited to see what happens.
Okay. More feedback here. Somebody says the Constitution spells out the duties of elected persons. It's representation, B, legislation, and C, oversight. That's exactly what I said. That these people should never come close to finances because it's not what they were elected to do. And they are also acting in impunity. Because the court said NG-CDF is unconstitutional. They should obey the law and the court's decision. Someone else says that that is basket of corruption for MPs. CDF benefit mostly MPs, his or her cronies. Someone also says that either to national government being monitored by National Assembly, MPs and counties monitored by senators and MCAs, just as 2010 Constitution says NG-CDF is illegal. Mwingine anasema remove it and that money put into one basket so that education to be free from bursary to university. But that is another concern, that NG-CDF is not meant for bursary solely. All right? In as much as they want it to be in a consolidated fund, that education should be free for all. What about other projects in the constituency? I think that's where the problem is, because other stakeholders will say, because the member of parliament has this money in his docket, he's benefiting more than us. So scrap it and take it back to the national consolidated fund, and then let the government run it. But will it work effectively even if it's put in a consolidated fund?
It obviously raises a lot of questions and concerns, because most of the views that have been collected, they are mostly communicating to the questions surrounding education, bursaries, and probably school-related programs. Well, my understanding of the NG-CDF is broader, beyond.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's just that maybe they have chosen to focus on education, which is also a very good and noble thing to focus on, but there should be more, because there should be more issues that should be handled within the constituencies. So I don't think for sure if consolidating the fund and taking it back to the national government will cure the problem, because we might actually see a reverse of some of the programs that have already been carried out and implemented by the constituency, at the constituency level. And again, sorry Vic, and again, when we are thinking about decentralization of power and resources, removing this money from the constituencies and taking it to the national government, are we not going back? When we are talking about decentralization, the spirit of devolution, why are we now in devolved system? If we go back now to removing these funds from the constituencies, and taking it back to the national government for implementation and all, what are we saying about devolution and decentralization of those resources? It obviously takes us back, which is not a very good idea.
Every decision was made at the Ministry of Education somewhere in Nairobi, Harambee House, and was it Jogo House or something?
Exactly.
That if you want a development in particular constituency, you have to look for the CS. Back then it was a cabinet minister to make decisions. So let's just be hypothetical here. So what if it's scrapped off in its entirety?
There is a very high likelihood that we will not see some of the fruits that were born while it has been functional, there's a very, very high likelihood, because it's a good fund that has achieved so much. Unfortunately, that has also not been has been largely misappropriated. So I am of the opinion that it should not be scrapped off, because it's a good fund. It has achieved good and beautiful things for our nation at the constituency levels, but it needs to, there are so many loopholes that needs to be sealed, and we need to do it devoid of the politics.
Somebody is saying that let it be put under the county government and be issued by MCS. Mambo ni kidogo sana.
I think that will, in my opinion, that will be the first step towards the wrong. Towards the wrong direction.
That would mean a lot of policies will have to be changed.
Of course.
Legally speaking, because it has to go to the county government, and then it comes from the county government to the members of county assembly. That would include a lot of legislation for it to be effected. A lot of feedback is just coming in.
Okay.
Lastly, I would rather it be placed under district development committee, that is national government body, and the MP be the oversight, the project being undertaken. And lastly, say that otherwise, governors know. These are just...
The governors know?
Okay.
Yeah,
governors know. There's something I've censored there. So, basically, it would rather be placed under district development committee. So it's unconstitutional as per the court, so which means everything that is done right now has to be crafted that when the judge or when the courts will have to look at it, they will have to interpret it, that it's legal, the process and the procedures are watertight, whether it is under the district committee, under MPs, or whichever it is, it's watertight, that is quite devoid of having all these legal loopholes that we are seeing. And finally, on this, the constituency, the Mwananchi, what do you think the Mwananchi will suffer if this money is not actually taken back to the national government? The biggest beneficiary here, let's just say, is Mwananchi.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are those learners whose education and has been taken care of by virtue of this fund. So the future of their education will be left unstable and unknown, which is very dangerous and quite unfortunate. There are so many other projects that this fund should be able to take care of. We are talking, for instance, development. So those ones too will have stalled, not like they have taken off already, but they will also be left without a fund to take care of them. So I think scrapping it off is definitely a very, very wrong way of going about it. But it is in taking up the required steps to make sure that it is there legally and it is there constitutionally and it is being managed, oversighted, and is being functional, using the correct people, the proper stakeholders, and people that ought to make sure that the fund achieves what it was initially supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think it's quite important to note that if you are in any constituency across the country, please just make it to any of the positions or the centers where public participation is taking place. It will end tomorrow. It started yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And members of parliament are all busy in their constituencies across the country, collecting views. Your view and your point is quite important in as far as this is concerned. Some of us never used NG-CDF, but you can see the fruits of it being around. Well, siasa iko hapa na pale, that is what we consume as Kenyans. But the most important thing, please, if you can make it to any center, go and get your view done. Warimu Gatacha, an advocate of the High Court, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Vic,
That's
for having me.
It. Asante sana. All right, we're taking a break and we come back. We'll be crossing over to radio today. They're talking about state of security in the country. State of security in the country. Rashid Makondo and Dora Manya will be handling that. Stay with us. I'm Victor Lo. Good morning. Bye.